This video deals with political polarization. I intend to discuss this topic objectively and dispassionately. I have links to the articles and studies that support my statements in the description of this video. But polarization is also a topic that arouses strong feelings in me and everybody else. In fact, about the only thing we can agree on in this polarized environment is that polarization sucks. We all hate it. I feel the need to express my feelings about polarization, and it will take me 1 minute and 6 seconds. Please bear with me. Thank you. I needed to get that off my chest. Now, in explaining why over 62 million people voted for Trump, we have to start with polarization. Political polarization is a serious and worsening problem for our democracy. It's already unbelievably bad, and it's getting worse. The most worrying thing about this is that partisans' negative views of their opponents have increased. In other words, the Republicans hate the Democrats, and the Democrats hate the Republicans more than ever. I have a link to a study that shows this in the description of the video. Now, it is possible for people who have very different views to work together to solve common problems if they respect each other and if they can communicate and agree on common facts relevant to the solution. However, that is not the kind of polarization we have. The polarization in the country is reflected in the polarization in Congress. Now, the two lines in this graphic represent the Senate and the House of Representatives, but you can see how the lines move together. High numbers mean Democrats and Republicans vote completely differently on issues. Lower numbers mean they vote together more often. Now, as you can see from this, political polarization in Congress is the highest it's been in 138 years. From about 1920 through 1940, polarization fell, and it's been steadily rising since then. I have a link in the description of the video to the book in which this chart is laid out. Partisans on both sides receive their news from different sources, and they can't even agree on basic questions of fact. About 47% of consistent conservatives relied mainly on a single news source, Fox News. Now, for consistent liberals, the news sources were a little more diverse. They included CNN, NPR, MSNBC, and the New York Times. But what this means is that people on both sides read and view different information. They're in their own filter bubbles. They tend to communicate with and hear only from like-minded people. There's a link in the description of the video to the study that supports this. You have groups of people who don't understand each other, don't respect each other, and whose identities are bound up in their own positions. What would you think would happen when they try to discuss issues? Miscommunication, frustration, anger, shouting, and all the things that go with polarized discussions. People actually become less able to communicate over time, more polarized over time through these interactions. Actually, there are experts who know a lot about how to resolve conflicts. There are training programs for all types of conflict, from interpersonal to international conflict. But all these depend on both sides showing at least some willingness to try. Techniques are premature now because Trump supporters are not yet ready to try. And Trump stirs up conflict and exacerbates polarization. He seems to be one of those very rare individuals who like polarization, even though it nauseates the rest of us. The only way I can see to help this situation is to attempt to develop empathy with the other side. Now, I don't mean you need to learn to love the other side or to feel their pain or anything like that. What I mean is to understand their thoughts. It's cognitive empathy. Now, here's how it's done. You start with the craziest, dumbest, most offensive thing your opponents say. And then you ask yourself, do they really mean this? Are they just trying to irritate me, rattle my chain, and so on? Or do they really believe it? And if you determine that they do, then ask yourself, what assumptions would they have to make in order to believe what they said? And then you ask, what's the most important evidence that they have for their assumptions? And in this way, you can begin to appreciate, to understand their worldview. We can't deal with this polarization and learn how to make collective decisions. In spite of it, we can't elect competent presidents. And if we can't elect better presidents, we can't have our democracy anymore. Now, this is the second worst period of polarization in our country's history. The worst occurred during the lead up to the Civil War. During this period, for example, in 1856, Congressman Preston Brooks from South Carolina attacked Congressman Charles Sumner from Massachusetts and beat him into unconsciousness with his cane. Now, this kind of thing has not yet happened in our current period of polarization. We settled that conflict, but it took a civil war to do it. The next video on this playlist deals with the Civil War and the polarization at that time and how it applies to our current polarization. I made that video in 2012 when polarization was so bad I thought it was not going to get any worse. Boy, was I wrong. Are we going to need another war to deal with the current polarization? I just read this book after I made the video, so this is an add-on. This book helped me to understand how to think more clearly in polarized situations. Not more objectively or dispassionately, but more inclusively, more charitably. And if you think that way in polarized situations, you will think more comprehensively and more productively. That's the way I see it anyway. Dr. Jacobs, thank you.